Democrat governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, makes a blasphemous, vaguely video with a prominent liberal journalist. Joe Biden calls on the Prime Minister of Israel to help with the hurricane in Florida. And Star Wars trans is a clone. I'm Michael Knowles. This is The Michael Knowles Show. Welcome back to the show. As if all that weren't enough, if we have time, we will also get to the preschool teacher who was caught little kids to make them sleep at school. First, though, I got to tell you about the Candle Club. If you've not gotten your Candle Club merch, you got to get it right now. Obviously, we have the permanent seasonal candle, the PSL candle. That's in the Michael Knowles collection. We then have the Wise Man, Old Soul, Chem du Lachem. We have the actual limited seasonal collection, that is the Apple Orchard, which reminds me of a wonderful poem, a contemporary poem in the New Formalist School. So if you want your home to smell like any of those things, go to thecandleclub.com, thecandleclub.com. Then, once you've got the incense going on, then you ought to seriously consider praying. And that's why you got to check out Hallow. Go to hallow.com/Knowles. I have to tell you about the exciting stuff going on at Hallow, the #1 Christian prayer and meditation app. They have thousands of prayers, meditations, resources, and incredible spiritual leaders. But now they're starting a new prayer challenge that will be terrific. You've all probably heard me refer to C.S. Lewis on the show. Well, Hallow is starting a prayer series on C.S. Lewis's most popular book, Mere Christianity. This book is such a great introduction to and defense of the Christian faith. It is insightful and deep, yet so clear, simple, and easy to understand. Every day, the series will go through a passage, reflect on it, and then enter into a time of prayer. I have not even told you the best part yet. The British survival expert and TV star Bear Grylls will be one of the guides. You definitely need a British guide to narrate C.S. Lewis. He's perfect for it. He will be joined by my friend and Catholic podcaster, Matt Fradd, and Father Gregory Pine. You won't want to miss it. Plus, Hallow has some great content for election week to help us keep our sanity. I'm sure we're going to need it. Download Hallow for 3 months free at hallow.com/Knowles, K-N-W-L-E-S. That is hallow.com/Knowles. Download the app for free. Join the challenge at hallow.com/Knowles, hallow.com/Knowles for an exclusive 3-month free trial of all 10,000 plus prayers and meditations. I saw the weirdest video I've ever seen in politics yesterday. I don't know how else to put it. You probably saw it too. This video went everywhere. It is not, I'm not being hyperbolic. I'm not exaggerating. I'm not falling into the error of believing that things happen now or for any reason more extraordinary than things that have happened in the past. This is the weirdest video that any politician has ever put out in my lifetime or your lifetime. It is a video of Democrat Governor Gretchen Whitmer sensually and I think blasphemously feeding Doritos to a prominent liberal journalist who has made programs with Vox Media, with NBC News. This is not even some random fringe TikToker, like a regular, pretty mainstream left-wing journalist. If you are only listening on podcast or radio, I will narrate this brief, bizarre video for you. LibJourno on her knees, opens her mouth, sticks her tongue out, smiles, rolls her eyes in the back of her head. And then there's Gretchen Whitmer, stone-faced, wearing a Harris Walls camo hat, standing above her, feeding her a Dorito. And J.D. Vance is weird. Don't forget that. Don't forget. Because J.D. Vance thinks it's good to have families. So he's a huge weirdo. Pay no attention to the sacrilegious dominatrix softcore video that the sitting Democrat governor of Michigan, a swing state in the 2024 election, just put out. A lot of people scratching their heads. And I'm trying not to just jump to one conclusion above others. But any conclusion I draw about this seems weird, seems bizarre, seems inappropriate. Some have suggested that the TikTok video is just a play on this meme that has gone around, where some lady, some like dominatrix looking lady, is feeding milk to a lady on the ground. So it's a meme about, not directly, but it's a meme about. So that's one explanation that people have come up with. And unfortunately, that's the most charitable explanation. That's the most gracious explanation to whatever Gretchen Whitmer is doing here. Because I think the more likely explanation is that this is a mockery of Holy Communion, of the Eucharist. For non-Catholics out there, or even Catholics who are really modern, who are not familiar with the traditional liturgy, they might miss what's going on here. But when a Catholic at the Holy Mass receives communion, traditionally one does so on one's knees, on the tongue, not receiving in the hand, and the priest is standing and he administers the Holy Sacrament. That does appear to be what's going on here, except in this case, the host, the body, blood, soul, and divinity of our Lord Jesus Christ, is replaced with a Dorito. So it's a kind of mockery of the Eucharist. And a Dorito, I think, because Kamala Harris has said that's her guilty pleasure. That's even the fact that we're talking about guilt, or shame or sin, I guess, I think plays a role in this scene. I don't think I'm looking too deeply into it because I don't know how to look into it in a more shallow way. I don't know what's the innocent explanation. It's either alluding to or mocking Christ, and specifically Catholics. What is that? Especially, the Democrats really need to win Catholics, especially in Pennsylvania right now, and the race is really tightened up, and a lot of places are putting Trump ahead of Kamala right now. We'll get to that in just a moment. Who thought this was a good idea? Well, it's a meme. It'll go viral. It'll get attention. Yeah, not all attention is good, though. Like Jeffrey Dahmer got a lot of attention. Why are they doing this? I'll tell you why they're doing this. Any explanation you come up with? No, it's a thing. No, it's a sacrilege thing. No, this is who the Democrats are. This is who they are. I think it was Peter Kraft who pointed out that the Democrats have exalted abortion in recent decades, not merely to the sort of unfortunate, necessary evil that should be safe, legal, and rare, but to a positively good thing. They've elevated it to the level of a sacrament, and they do so by satanically inverting the language of the sacrament. When the host is consecrated in the Holy Mass, the priest says, reciting the words of our Lord, "This is my body. This is my body, which will be given up for you. This is my body." And the sacrament of abortion, which does not give life but takes life, uses the exact same phrase. This is my body. My body, my choice. And so this sacrilege, this attack on the faith, this attack on God is baked into the left from the beginning. That when the terms left and right come to be applied to politics, it is in the context of the French Revolution at the National Assembly, when the Christians are on the right side of the aisle and the secularists and the atheists and the levelers are on the left side of the aisle. So that's always baked in there. As for the sex stuff, well, the libs can never stop talking about the sex stuff. And what's ironic is they accuse the right of having an obsession with sex. But of course, we're not the aggressors in the culture war. The right would be perfectly happy never to talk about weird sex stuff again. The only reason we talk about it is because the left initiates the conversations. The left is the group that insists upon being legalized. The left is the group that insists on prurient content all over the internet and even on billboards and on television. The left is the group that wants to talk about this stuff in front of your kids. The left is the group that wants to abolish sexual distinctions in bathrooms and locker rooms, say. The left is the group that wants to relax public indecency laws. So it's the left that's pushing all this stuff. Because why? Why? There is an ideological reason. There's a reason that comes from their view of liberation. Also, just because it's their man. I don't know what to tell you. That's why they are and they like doing weird stuff, and it's not all that much more complicated than that. So it's who they are. This is who they are, and even if it's going to hurt them among Catholics, their intellect is so clouded and their will is so compromised that they just do it anyway. This is something that people kind of forget about sin, and specifically about serious sin. It not only compromises your will. If you're a religious person, you would understand that it might compromise your salvation, and it has all these spiritual effects that are really bad. But it also clouds your intellect. And even if you're a secular person or you're agnostic, you should probably recognize this too. When a person engages in persistent sin, like does a bunch of or scams people or robs people or does weird stuff or just in any way engages in persistent sin, it clouds your intellect. You're not thinking straight. Think of the drug addict as a perfect example. You're not the kind of person who thinks straight. You do things that are irrational. People who become real dirty, rotten, filthy, degenerate sinners, they do things that are evil and wicked and vicious, but they also do things that are just stupid and irrational and contrary to their own interests. That's because sin is irrational and it clouds your intellect. That's what's going on here as well. Now, speaking of Michigan, we got some good news. While the libs are making sacrilegious dominatrix videos with their sitting governor, Trump is pulling ahead in Michigan. The Real Clear polling average now has Trump winning Michigan, which means that if Trump wins Michigan, it's got him winning Arizona, got him winning Pennsylvania. That means that Trump Vance 296 electoral votes to Harris Walz's 242. The only poll that matters is on election day. Do not get complacent. A friend of mine just asked me, as I was walking into work this morning, said, "Hey, Michael, I got a relative in Texas, but this relative is not going to be in Texas for the election. But I don't know, I've got all sorts of questions about the mail-in ballots. And so is it better not to vote or is it better to send in the mail-in?" Send in the mail-in. I'm not saying there's no risk that something bad happens with the mail-in, but send in the mail-in. The libs are hoping that they suppress your desire to vote with all of the shenanigans they pull. Send in that mail-in. Vote now. Vote early. Verify your vote often. There's nothing we can do about shenanigans that have been permitted to take place, but we can fight real hard. Right now, things are looking up. And the proof that things are looking up for Trump, it's not just what the Real Clear Politics average is showing. It's not just because of the weird sacrilegious porn that the governor of Michigan is posting. It's because Kamala Harris herself is looking increasingly desperate. Now, the one issue that Kamala's running on, the one issue that really seems to animate her is probably the most heinous issue in politics. That is killing preborn babies. That's why you ought to check out Preborn. Go to preborn.com/Knowles. The left is zealous for the blood of babies, going as far as supporting free abortions at the DNC. Kamala's extreme radical stance for abortion is clear in her running mate. As First Things reported, Tim Walz supports the right to infanticide. That's true of abortion broadly, but it's especially clear when we talk about taking the baby's life after birth, as Tim Walz has supported. Insanity. The media have dubbed this the abortion election. We have got to stand up to this evil. When you join forces with Preborn, the largest pro-life organization in the nation, you are protecting the greatest victims in our society, babies in their mother's womb. Preborn's network of clinics is positioned in the highest abortion areas in the nation. They've rescued over 300,000 babies. When a woman considering abortion searches to end her baby's life, Preborn is there. The power of the ultrasound combined with God's love doubles a baby's chance at life. One ultrasound is just $28. 5 ultrasounds, $140. To donate securely, dial pound 250, say keyword baby. That's pound 250 keyword baby, or go to preborn.com/Knowles, preborn.com/Knowles. I personally support this organization. I strongly recommend you can give what you can. Preborn.com/Knowles. Kamala seems to want another debate. That's how desperate she's getting, okay? The people are already voting, and they say, no, let's do another debate. Let's do another debate. Trump has put the kibosh on this, I suspect for the final time, in a beautifully written, this is poetic diction, Truth Social post, of course, in all caps. I'm going to read you this post in its entirety, so there's no question about what Trump means and how he interprets Kamala's actions. All caps. So I'm not going to scream, but you can imagine. I won the last 2 debates, one with Crooked Joe, the other with Lion Kamala. I accepted the Fox News invitation to debate Kamala on September 4th, but she turned it down. J.D. Vance easily won his debate with Tampon Tim Walz, who called himself a knucklehead. I'm also leading in the polls, with the lead getting bigger by the day and leading in all swing states. The first thing a prize fighter does when he loses a fight is say that he demands a rematch. It is very late in the process. Voting's already begun. There will be no rematch. Besides, Kamala stated clearly yesterday that she would not do anything different than Joe Biden, so there's nothing to debate. Thank you for your attention to this matter! ! Donald J. Trump. When Trump first came out after his debate with Kamala and said, I won, prize fighter wants a rematch, I don't want a rematch, I thought, okay, that's good spin. Does he really believe this? Might there still be a second debate? I don't know. I mean, we'll see, but that's good spin. Now I'm convinced he's totally right in his read of the situation. Kamala is obviously desperate. This is the reason that her campaign is allowing her and actually forcing her to do media interviews, all of which are disastrous, but they have to force her to do it because Kamala needs something to shake up the race at this late stage. She might have been able to get that from a debate with Donald Trump. Who knows? Those things are kind of unpredictable. And the libs would try to rig it as they rigged the first and only debate between Trump and Kamala. But otherwise, the only thing Kamala can do to try to shake it up now is go on and do these interviews herself, like that 60 Minutes interview, which was terrible for her and terrible for her campaign. So if I'm Trump, I'm thinking, oh, great. She's on the ropes. She's flailing around. She's in a bad position because every single thing that she can do right now to improve her position, other than debate me, which I wisely won't do, every single thing she can do has a great risk of also hurting her. And so far, every time she's done it, it has hurt her, which is good. That makes me feel that I'm not saying the Republicans are going to win it. It's far from in the bag. But it means Republicans could win it. Meanwhile, while Trump is trying to get the job back, while Kamala is trying to get the job for the first time as the sitting vice president, there is this question, which is, who is currently the president? The official answer is Joe Biden. Joe Biden seems a little confused about that, though, because Biden, responding to some taunt from President Trump, just came out and had this to say about the man that I think we all thought was the former president.
Have you spoken with former President Trump at all?
Are you kidding me? Mr. President Trump, former President Trump, get a life, man. Help these people.
Will you hold him accountable? You said you were going to hold those accountable.
Public will hold them accountable. You better in the press hold them accountable because you know the truth.
Will you plan to speak with former President Trump?
No.
He's just walking off in that really, I don't mean to make fun of his stiff gait because it's obviously a medical condition, but he's walking off like the characteristic grandpa just storming out of a room, kind of unclear where he's even going. Just, no, he's grumpy, no, I don't want to, because he just said this thing that didn't make any sense. He said, my message, Donald Trump, Mr. President Trump. Wait, is he the president? No, hold on, he's the former president. Mr. Former President Trump, help these people, meaning the victims of the hurricane. How is Trump supposed to help those people if he's not the president? Joe Biden, this is like Kamala Harris pretending that she's the president and complaining that Ron DeSantis won't take her call. But Ron DeSantis says, look, I'm the governor of Florida. I've worked on a lot of hurricanes. Kamala Harris has never called me once. She has no role in this process whatsoever. I'm speaking to the president. The president is Joe Biden. But then Joe Biden is asked if he's talked to Donald Trump. He said, absolutely not. But Mr. President Trump, you need to help these people. But how can he help these people when he's not the president? Joe Biden clearly doesn't think he's the president. Kamala Harris isn't the president. Ron DeSantis is not the president, though he's doing a very good job in Florida. Who's the president? It does not appear to be Joe Biden. When you look at Joe Biden, increasingly, everything this guy says, it is clear that the lights are on, but no one's home. Joe Biden was just asked again about the hurricane. He was giving his status update, the hurricane response, and he somehow managed to tie Bibi Netanyahu, the prime minister of Israel, to the hurricane in Florida.
Mr. President, what did Prime Minister Netanyahu tell you about his plans relating to retaliation?
He's coming over to help with the storm.
I was trying to figure out, it's kind of like the Gretchen Whitmer video. I was trying to figure, is there anything I'm missing here? And then I thought, well, okay, if you go really deep into the lore, I guess Biden is saying maybe they really do control the weather. I don't think they do control the weather. So I don't really know what Biden is talking about here. But he was asked a question about Netanyahu's next moves vis-a-vis Iran or Lebanon or even Gaza. And he says he, Benjamin Netanyahu, PM of Israel, is coming over to help with the storm, which would be very nice of him if he did that. Netanyahu's got some other things on his plate right now, so I'd be surprised if he came over to clear trees and branches away. This guy, Joe Biden, not Netanyahu, not the reported, Joe Biden he's not there. He's not in control. We have a country without a president right now. I'm not saying we have a country without a political order. We obviously have a political order. In fact, we have a political order that exerts a lot of control even over the president when there is an active president. And we call that the administrative state or the deep state or the blob or whatever. So that still exists. But we don't actually have an executive right now, it appears. Now, turning back to DeSantis and talking about this storm, the libs have this stupid talking point that the storm is being caused by global warming. And this is evidence that Republicans need to take global warming seriously because Republicans are really responsible for this storm. We will get to Ron DeSantis' masterclass in how to answer that question in a moment. First, though, I want to talk to you about Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Knowles. The big wireless carriers want to limit you to two choices when it comes to data: unlimited or even more unlimited. I don't know. Guess what? Those are ridiculously expensive options for your phone. Stop overpaying for data you will never use. That's like paying for a pot of coffee when you only need a cup, or filling your entire truck bed full of gas when you only need a tank. With Pure Talk, my cell phone company, you can choose how much data you actually want and save. Listen to this. For just $35 a month, you can get unlimited talk, text, and 15 gigs of data plus mobile hotspot on America's most dependable 5G network. Do you know what you can do with that much data? You can browse the internet for 500 hours. You can stream 3,000 songs. You can watch 30 hours of video, and that is if you're not on Wi-Fi, and most of the time, most of us are on Wi-Fi. Here's the best part. When you switch your cell phone service to Pure Talk on a qualifying plan, you will get 1 year free of DailyWire Plus Insider. That is access to the library of DailyWire Plus movies, series, and documentaries, including Lady Ballers, What is a Woman, Mr. Burcham, Run, Hide, Fight, uncensored, ad-free daily shows, 1 year free of our kids' platform, Bent Key, and a free Leftist Tears Tumblr. The only way you can get this special offer is going to puretalk.com/Knowles or call and mention my name. Stop overpaying for your cell service. Go to puretalk.com/Knowles today. Switch to a qualifying plan. Get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus Insider. My favorite comment yesterday is from Adrian Bardon, 782, who says, if it quacks like a duck and it walks like a duck, keep it away from Ohio. Very, very good advice. Some lib reporter just tried to set up Governor DeSantis with a question about how the hurricanes are caused by global warming, how they're really Republicans' fault because Republicans don't support communism or whatever. They don't want to nationalize industries. Ron DeSantis gave a perfect response.
It's not due to global warming.
Tornadoes?
Yeah, the increase in tornadoes in
I think you could go back and find tornadoes for all of human history for sure. And especially, Florida, how does this storm rate in kind of the history of storms? I think it hit with a barometric pressure of, about 950 millibars when it hit? Which I think if you go back to 1851, there's probably been 27 hurricanes that have had so the lower the barometric pressure, the stronger it is. I think there have been about 27 hurricanes that have had lower barometric pressure on landfall than Milton did. And of those, 17 occurred, I think, prior to 1960. And the most powerful hurricane on record since the 1850s in the state of Florida occurred in the 1930s, the Labor Day hurricane. Barometric pressure on that was 892 millibars. It totally wiped out the Keys. We've never seen anything like it, and that remains head and shoulders above any powerful hurricane that we've ever had in the state of Florida. The most deadly hurricane we've ever had was in 1928. The Okeechobee hurricane killed over 4,000 people. Fortunately, we aren't going to have anything close to that on this hurricane. But even ones like Ian, where you had, wasn't even close to that. So, I just think people should put this in perspective. They're
absolutely destroyed with facts and logic. I love it. Because DeSantis has this great ability to speak, just kind of like a regular guy who's a baseball player. And it probably hurt him a little bit in the presidential race because he doesn't have that Ronald Reagan kind of, well, you and I have a rendezvous with destiny. He doesn't have that soaring rhetoric. It's not Lincolnian exactly. He doesn't have Trump's ability to do stand-up comedy wherever he goes. But DeSantis has what earlier political observers have called the charisma of competence. So sometimes during the presidential, people knocked his charisma. They said he didn't have enough riz but he has the charisma of competence, which, and I think he's also a charming man in his own way, a friendly man in his own way, but this is where he shines. This is it, because Ron DeSantis is extremely intelligent, and he can speak in a way that is understandable, that is simple for normal people who are not as intelligent as Ron DeSantis to understand. So I think pretty much tornadoes have existed before industrialization. I think there's been tornadoes before. And so if you look, around like 1850, you're probably going to see about 27, and he had these statistics crystal clear in his head. But he's just kind of talking in a folksy way. And then you're going to see this many with this kind of barometric pressure and this number here. And since 1922, it was this and that, this. And it just, the effect of it, of the sum total of his speech, is to just completely destroy this narrative that climate change or global warming or whatever is responsible for hurricanes. That is how you do it. Absolute masterclass. Now, speaking of climate and climate change, the liberal reporter, Matt Yglesias, just had a speech that he was giving interrupted by some of these climate lunatics who climbed on stage and started yelling about the sun monster.
All right, Matt Yglesias, we're here to call you on your stance on fracking. Frack, dangerous fossil fuel funded lie. The fracking of methane is the future for our world. How do you prove savings between two of the worst hurricanes as Milton is on the doorstep? We cannot afford this. So what do you say?
Meets the country's national security needs, its economic needs.
How do you meet economic needs when we have disasters that cost tens of billions of dollars and it's only getting worse?
You see, if you're not watching, you see all these kind of weirdos with the sign. And then Matt Yglesias just kind of smiling with a bemused look on his face.
Fracking is a false solution. Stop the pollution. Fracking is a false solution. Stop
And the main instigator won't get off the stage. So Matt Yglesias just gets up, kind of walks off stage with security. You have a son. You want your son to have a future? I don't support hitting women under any circumstances, but a woman yelling at me about my son, that might tempt me. Okay, but Yglesias doesn't do it. Yglesias doesn't yell at them. He doesn't become visibly angry. He just kind of laughs, sits down, and as they're still surrounding him and yelling at him, he says, well, would you like to read an article? And it's kind of funny. But it reminded me of a similar stunt that was pulled on West Virginia moderate Democrat Senator Joe Manchin up at the Harvard Kennedy School back in March, I think it was. Some of these climate wackos come in, they pull the same stunt. Notice how Manchin's response is different than Matt Yglesias' response.
You sick how dare you?
And then security throws this guy on the floor. He gets out of the room. That's a better response. I thought Matt Yglesias did fine. He didn't really allow them to intimidate him. He just kind of laughed, and then they walked him off stage. He could have engaged them a little bit more, but he was fine. I'm not, he's a super lib journalist who sometimes attacks his own side. He's kind of like a neoliberal, a little bit more establishment than some of the far leftists. It was okay. Manchin's response was better, though. somebody starts talking about your kid, somebody starts, in this case with Manchin, starts using profanity, calling you all sorts of nasty names, one ought to turn the other cheek, sure, but one ought never to cower. One ought never to, one needs to turn the other cheek, not to discard one's dignity, but to preserve one's dignity. In fact, so what does Manchin do? He squares right up on this guy. Manchin was a football player. He's a pretty big guy. But then, even if you're not a big Joe Manchin, then security comes up in between them and just takes this kid who was interrupting this little seminar and who was yelling profanity at a sitting U.S. senator. The security takes this kid, picks him up, and hurls him out of the room onto the ground. That's the correct response. I know that some of the free speech absolutists on the left and the right might not support that kind of action, but that's the right kind of move. It is good to enforce civilization. We don't need these mouthy little brats behaving in a way that is contrary to civilization, that is contrary to standards and norms and decency, running their lips. We don't need that. Nobody really benefits from that. Certainly not interrupting a private event at a serious place, or an ostensibly serious place, the Harvard School or Harvard Kennedy School, with a sitting U.S. senator. We don't need to put up with that. Don't need to put up with that at all. We don't need to cede the stage to these people because of some false notion of free speech. It's good when security throws these guys to the ground, when they are obscene and getting up in the face of sitting senators. Now, there's a story I have to get to. Really important story, and I've promised my nerd associate producer that I would get to it because people are drawing all the wrong conclusions from this. Star Wars apparently still exists. You thought that Disney had just taken this popular franchise out in the backyard like Old Yeller and put a bullet in its head, but no, it's still limping on. Star Wars has just transed a clone trooper. What is a clone trooper? I had to ask Professor Jacob about this, and he gave me his apparently expensive model clone trooper helmet. It's different than a stormtrooper, which are in the original movies, but it looks kind of like the stormtrooper. But the difference, I'm going to put this nerd relic down here. The difference is the clone trooper in the lore all descend from one person. It's clones of this guy Jango Fett, whose son Boba Fett is like a bounty hunter, or I don't know, whatever. So this is important to transing a character because they're all genetically exactly the same, all of these clone troopers. So how is it the case that in this new book, which is a canon book, it's not just fan fiction, it's a canon book, Star Wars: The Secrets of the Clone Troopers, it is revealed that there's this trans clone trooper. Captain Rex describes the trans clone this way, quote, "When one of our kind expressed her gender identity differently than her fellow troopers, she feared she'd have to hide who she truly was inside. Fortunately, her brothers in the 7th Sky Corps gave her the name Sister as a constant reminder that she belonged." Okay, so it's silly to inject this modern gender ideology in a galaxy far, far away, but Star Wars is just it's a myth, right? And myths tell us something not just about a distant past that may or may not have literally existed, but they tell us about our own times. That's what they're for. So Professor Jacob, my nerd producer, observed it's kind of silly that this clone trooper has the trans flag on his helmet because it's a galaxy far, far away, a long, long time ago. And so how do they have the exact same trans colors as we have now? That's the least of it, guys. This is actually kind of based. This is actually pretty right-wing because by transing a clone, Star Wars, wittingly or unwittingly, is admitting that transgenderism is not biological. Star Wars is admitting that transgenderism is a social phenomenon. It's a product of environment and a defect of the will, but it's not biological. If Star Wars had transed any other character in the entire universe, they would have been preserving pretty much all of the transgender ideology. By transing a clone, a character that is biologically, of necessity, identical to all the other clone troopers, Star Wars is asserting that transgenderism is not biological, is not natural, is not innate, that transgenderism is a social fad and a social phenomenon brought about by environmental factors and the individual will. And I totally agree. So accidentally, sometimes artists tell the truth, even when they're trying not to. You know, Kamala Harris has raised over $1 billion since she entered the race in late July. Even seasoned experts are saying Harris's fundraising is unlike anything we've ever seen. While the Dems are raking in cash to push their radical agenda, the conservative movement is being outspent and silenced. At the Daily Wire, we're dedicated to preserving conservative values and exposing the truth that the media won't show you. To win, we need you with us. Go to dailywire.com/subscribe to become a member. Help us stand up against the $1 billion Harris machine. That is dailywire.com/subscribe. Finally, we've arrived at my favorite time of the week when I get to hear from you in the mailbag. Our mailbag is sponsored by Pure Talk. Go to puretalk.com/Knowles today. Switch to a qualifying plan. Get 1 year free of Daily Wire Plus Insider.
Hey, Michael. Hey, Mr. Nostradamus. As an aspiring 14-year-old who wants to be deeply involved in politics in the future, and as someone who is currently writing a book about politics and about how the radical left have destroyed this country and destroyed its Christian and traditional values that it was initially built upon, I was just going to ask, exactly how do you write a book about politics? How do you form a book about politics? And since I know you have a lot of experience with writing books about politics, I wanted to ask you that. Okay, thank you, Michael. Thank you for all that you do in saving this country from the radical left. Thank you.
Very kind. Good question. You're obviously intelligent and precocious and ambitious and serious. So that's all good stuff. That's why you want to write a book. And that is why you should not write a book. Eventually, you can write a book. You should not write a book at 14. No 14-year-old should write a book. The reason for that is you have not read enough books to write a book. You have not lived enough life to have the experiences that are helpful in writing a book. Your brain has not developed to the point that you are at your prime powers to write a book, and you probably don't have a sufficient command of grammar and syntax and English composition to write a book. It's no knock on you. No 14-year-old does. I think even of John Stuart Mill, who I think he spoke Latin by 3 and ancient Greek by 5. You know, this is one of the last really almost perfectly educated men in the West. He had a glaring omission in his education because he never learned anything about religion, which is why his philosophy was bunk. But it's still otherwise a pretty well-educated guy. Even he should not write a book at 14. Nobody should write a book at 14. So what could you do? You should read a lot. You should read books that are challenging, that are books that maybe an 18-year-old or a 22-year-old should read. If you're this precocious, you should read, I don't know, just off the top of my head, The Closing of the American Mind by Alan Bloom, After Virtue by Alistair McIntyre, even, I don't know, Escape from Skepticism by Christopher Derrick. These are just books that are coming to mind. You should read those. C.S. Lewis is really good for a 14-year-old to read because his ideas are really profound, but he's writing in a way that is somewhat accessible. Read all that stuff. If you want to write an essay. Learn how to write essays. Most books should be essays. Most essays should never be written. So try that. Write an essay. Write a letter. Work on your composition. This is a good time to work on your command of the English language. Buy Strunk and White, by The Elements of Style. Read that. Sometimes I'm a little tough on my colleagues because they haven't read like the basics of English composition. These are books that it's not even their fault. They're not really taught in school as much anymore. But if you read the Strunk and White's Elements of Style, which is like 50 pages or something, if you read that, you will be better at writing than most adults today. But do all that stuff now. 14 is not the time to write a book. 14 is the time to read books. Next question.
Hey there, Michael. I'm Catherine, and I'm new to your show. Thank you for all you do. Wanted to ask you a quick question. I am in the Pentecostal charismatic evangelical space. I go to a fairly large church, and I'm noticing a trend that is, and I'm single, by the way, and I'm noticing a trend that's very weird. I'm noticing married men that don't wear wedding rings, and it's weird. What's the deal with that? As somebody who's single in her upper 30s, I want to be at church and find somebody who is, similar in values and all the things. And then these guys show up to church and they're attractive and, kind, and it looks like they have a brain cell. And then they find out they're married because they didn't have their wedding ring on. What's the deal with that? Help me out. Thanks. Bye.
So this is actually not a new thing. This is a very old thing. Traditionally, men would not wear wedding rings. It's of relatively recent vintage that men wear wedding rings. I wear a wedding ring. I'm quite traditionalist, but I wear a wedding ring as a practical matter. Because if I'm out somewhere, I don't want a woman coming up and hitting on me. And listen, you boys, sometimes ladies talk, okay? I'm not saying it's all the time. I'm not saying I'm Brad Pitt, but it happens, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want to create a scandal. I don't want even the appearance of something untoward. So I wear the wedding ring for that reason. So a lot of guys don't like wearing jewelry. A lot of guys, and also just traditionally men did not wear the ring. So that might be why. However, symbols and signs change over time. Now, this is a sign that one is married, man or woman. So I do think men, as a practical matter, probably should wear them. But I don't think they're not wearing their rings because they're cads or something like that. Traditionally, men did not wear them. If we lived in a different time, I don't know that I would wear one. But because we live in the time we do now, I would, and I would encourage other guys to as well. Next question.
Hello, Michael. My name is Aaron. I'm 35. My wife of 11 years passed away from stage 4 breast cancer at 34 just over a year ago. I just wanted your opinion at when do you think it's an appropriate time to move on and get back into the game and get back out there? I don't feel ready yet, but what are your thoughts? Thanks for taking my question, and God bless.
So sorry to hear about that. That is truly the stuff of nightmares. Really, really awful. So I hope you're doing okay, and time is healing wounds and all that. There is an answer, like an actual answer from etiquette, which is that the mourning period would traditionally be about a year. So you would certainly not date for a year. You would not, maybe you would wear some black clothing or something like that. There in the past have been more formal mourning rituals. Most of those are gone now, if not all of them are gone. But that would be the answer. As a matter of etiquette, it would be like a year. But it's however long you like. If you say you're not ready, then don't date. Then don't. Maybe you never want to get remarried. I think it was Hilaire Belloc, who I've mentioned recently. I was just reading a book of Hilaire Belloc's. But he, I think when his wife died, I don't think he ever remarried. I think he would kiss her bedroom door every time he walked by. He said, I had the best. Why do I need the rest? So you could do that too. I think that's totally fine. But if you're lonely and man is a coupling creature and you do want to remarry, I'd say after a year, you're good. So sorry though. We can certainly pray for you. Next question.
Hello, Mr. Knowles. I've never been to a Latin Mass before, but it's something I'm very interested in attending. I'm curious as to what your first Latin Mass experience was like, as I think I would feel a little out of my element. Of course, there is the language change, but I did study Latin for 6 years, so I'm looking forward to that part of it. Just don't get me started on the Italian-influenced accent.
Here we go.
The whole pacem, pacem debate. But that aside, I'm also excited for the smells and bells. Outside of that, I do have a bit of trepidation, though. You previously answered a question of mine where I stated I have a 6-month-old, incredibly beautiful baby daughter. She is now an 8-month-old, incredibly beautiful baby daughter. And I'm concerned about bringing her. The closest Latin Mass to where I live is about 45 minutes to an hour away. And my concern is that it will be too much for her with the travel. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and even how you and sweet little Lisa handle bringing your own boys to Mass. Also, in regards to the smells and bells, listeners, go get your Wiseman candle at thecandleclub.com. Don't forget to use promo code Eric's incredibly beautiful baby daughter for no discount. Thank you, Michael, and God bless.
Really good stuff. All good questions and concerns. Take your kid to the Latin Mass. It'll be fine. Don't worry. I have 3 under 4. My kids do better at the Latin Mass, at the traditional Latin Mass, than they do at the modern Mass. Even though the traditional Latin Mass, as a matter of minutes and seconds is longer, it feels shorter. Whereas the modern Mass, which according to your watch is shorter, it feels longer. It's just in the liturgy. Now, is your kid going to fuss and cry and yell? Yep, totally. Let the kid cry. It's okay. If the church ain't crying, it's dying. You know, man, let the kid cry. It's all right. You want there to be babies. That's a good sound in a church. It augments the smells and the bells. Then as for the drive, yeah, you know, you hope your kid doesn't mess up the nap or whatever. Yeah, I know it's a hassle, man. It is a hassle, but it's good for your kids to have that traditional liturgy. In my humble opinion, it'll be good for everybody. And I'm sure your Latin is much, much better than mine. Today is Fake Headline Friday. I need your help, but you can only do that in the Membrum Segmentum. If you want to become a member of the show, you go to dailywire.com, you use code Knowles, Knowles, at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans.